Now, usually when we talk about widening access to higher education, we talk about risk quite often, but generally speaking, that risk is quite specific and it's associated with university costs and student finance and the perception of student loans. However, in reality, risk is far more broad. It permeates a whole host of different decisions and facets that students, perhaps from underrepresented groups, will be facing when they're deciding whether or not to go to university. And these won't just come in their choice. There's a big assumption with the word choice that actually individuals who are making a decision over higher education have all of the appropriate resources that they need, but that's a conversation for another day, so we'll park that over there. But actually, we're looking at how these risks permeated decisions, yes, but also the ability to envisage and create concrete plans and take actions that would be related to higher education progression in the future. In addressing this, alongside educational decision making in the future more generally, within my doctoral research, one of the conceptual tools, or the bits that I really pulled on and found very, very useful, was the idea of embedded and contingent choosers. Now, the idea of embedded and contingent choosers was introduced in a paper back in 2002, so we're talking, 18 years ago now, by Ball, Reay and David. And the study that they were talking about specifically focused in on future educational decision making among students from minority ethnic groups. Now, what they argued is that when it came to future educational decision making, their choice could be categorised in two ways. The embedded choice was a choice that for the students that they were researching with may appear normal. It could be the one that multiple family members are undertaking. It could be one that loads of peers at their schools are investing their time and energy in, and probably one in which they have all of the resources to be able to achieve. So say I'm a 16-year-old student and my dad had his own plumbing company and he was an independent businessman, and I had loads of family members that were off in the trades. In that particular situation, if I was at a school in a working class town, it could be argued that perhaps going into a trade myself for me would be the embedded choice within that situation. Now, the contingent choice is quite different. The contingent choice is almost the polar opposite of that. So it's the choice with regards to your future in education that is a completely alien concept, one in which you are not equipped with any, perhaps, of the cultural, social and economic tools in which to realise. So if we go back to that example I just gave, and me in a working class town, having family members and friends that were in the trades, the idea of moving away to the University of Oxford would have been the contingent choice, because it would have been something that none of my family members and friends had done. It perhaps wasn't the normal trajectory for people that went to my school. Therefore, in terms of teacher advice and guidance, perhaps then they wouldn't hold the necessary resources to be able to give me a clear roadmap. And if I wanted to invest in that contingent choice, it would take me significantly more work to do so than going along the lines of this embedded choice, which all of those resources came far, far easier to me. Now, quite often with widening access to higher education, a lot of the time with students from underrepresented groups, it could be argued what we're doing is promoting that contingent choice, and that as this aspirational objective, particularly within that individualised raising aspiration discourse where we're saying this is the gold standard that you need to apply to, this choice that is completely outside of your lived experience. So let's dig in a little bit deeper into that. If we use that model and applied it to the work that we do as practitioners in widening access to education, then what options might we be saying are available to the student? Well, it could be argued that option one would be go for that safe bet of an embedded choice, a familiar trajectory which the members of your immediate social network have lots of experience navigating. So it could be going into the trades, it could be a multitude of different things. It could be going into service and retail, it could be going into the gig economy and individual employment, but there's the experience of navigating there, and it's something that is comfortable and safe, even if it's something that potentially later down the line could lead to some forms of economic precarity. Okay, and then we've got option two, which it could be argued is the ones as widening participation practitioners, people involved in outreach teams or student recruitment teams. This is the option that we're peddling. And what does that geographically and socially mobile trajectory into a higher education institution outside of the local region constitute for the students? What are we asking them to do? Well, we're asking them to follow a new educational trajectory outside of that student's experience completely. It involves the deferral of paid work, the accrual of student debt, and possibly moving away from close friends and family members who form that individual's network of support, whilst at the same time finding ways to access knowledge, skills, experiences, and resources to facilitate successful entry into higher education, none of which are readily and easily available for the students. Now, on top of this, you've got an elephant in the room, which we haven't even spoken about, which is attainment and exam success. So we might as well throw that into the mix too, for good measure. If I were a student and I had those two options available to me, to be honest with you, I'm not sure I'd pick higher education as the destination, because all of those things I just spoke about in option 2, they're the things that need to be undertaken in order to form that trajectory into higher education as an expectation as opposed to an aspiration. And that's a risky business. However, it's worth pointing out as well that this isn't a binary either or going on. You know, it's not the contingent choice or the embedded choice, and there's no middle ground. The world is full of grey areas, and it's messy and it's complex. And within my own research, each of the individuals that I work closely with, it could be argued, constituted a grey area. I had one student who had no experience of higher education within the family. However, his cousins were local councillors. They'd come from a working class background and built themselves up into quite senior positions and were active members of the local community. So for that individual, although it could be argued that higher education still was very much a contingent choice, there was lots of opportunities to draw on relevant social and cultural resources aligned to eventual participation in higher education. Because of his position and the support that he got at home, it meant that when it came to his exams, he was confident he'd do well, and he saw his exams as an opportunity to succeed. Whilst another one of my participants within the study didn't have access to those resources, very, very similar background, but didn't have a cousin who was a local politician, had family members who had really negative experiences of school and didn't do too well in exams. So when he framed future educational success, then it was about avoiding failure at all costs. And when it came to future educational decision making and plans, then it was based on contingencies should the worst happen, which in his eyes was the most likely. So in either of those, it's not a clear black and white. It's not embedded choice or contingent choice. Actually, it could be argued that there's a bit of a tightrope going on there between the two, and students are making their way along this very precarious tightrope whilst negotiating with those risks and the possible benefits and the security/insecurity that might come alongside those as well. So it's very, very complex. This idea is something that I dug into quite a lot in my doctoral research, and certainly something that was very, very prominent. Now, there's a few good academic articles that already dig into risk in a really interesting way. I'd highly recommend the work of Louise Archer, amongst others. What I'll do actually is I'll post some relevant journal articles in the description below. So if you're interested in finding out a bit more about risk and higher education decision making, some of the things that really influenced my thinking throughout my research, then you're more than welcome to. And if you do have a read or you've got any comments, it would be wonderful to have a read of them below and perhaps continue the discussion there. I hope you found this useful. See you next time.